Of Trust the Process Live. I, as always, am your host, James Hyden, here with my good fellas, James Jackson, the young gentleman himself, and Mr. Five Digits Max Coolish. Fellas, I'm not going to ask how you're doing because, frankly, I'm not in a place to care how anybody else is doing.
Max, that's crazy. I gave you a hug. Last time we were here 2 weeks ago, I gave you a hug for what was hard times on the Sixers. Yeah. If I would have known what was going to happen between the last 14 days of when I've seen you, I would have waited to give you that hug.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I did not think
that was a kiss of death.
I'm sorry. I did not think.
I know. Neither one of us thought it would be.
You're not sorry.
I am sorry. I did not think our layoff was going to be the entire Sixers.
That was a genuine hug of good luck. That was a genuine hug.
I was like, I wish better fortune on you. Yeah. I didn't know I was.
It does suck to know we won the same amount of playoff games as the Nets. That does.
Yeah, that's
dude. What are you trying to do to me? It's already it's a Monday.
I'm fully open wound, top to bottom open wound off this. Who cares? I'm numb to it.
I was trying to stitch mine back up, but you just dumped
a whole bunch of stuff. Hell yeah, go Birds, baby, we're back.
Yeah, but I mean, then we're gonna get into that later. But the Birds have injuries left and right. You know what? No, I'm
off to a rough start.
Seriously, I'm not.
We just did the show preview in 30 seconds.
Seriously, I think I hate my life. But if you are not in the know, as I'm assuming you are because everybody gets updates to their phone nowadays, but the process is finally over. It really is. Come on now, the process is officially it's
over. It's dead now.
Yeah, people would have argued that it was still good.
Now it's dead.
There was always that contingent. It's not over until we win a championship. Whatever.
I thought that was the process. I thought the process was the process towards the championship.
You know what? At this point, we don't even need to care because it's dead. It's literally at the bottom of the bottom of the Schuylkill right now. That thing is dead. So Brett Brown is officially no longer the coach of our Philadelphia 76ers. Just want to say right here, thank you to Brett Brown for sticking it out with us because we watched it. It must not have been easy to go through, sticking with us through the process. Everybody says it. You are a great guy. Brett Brown, the man, is a great person. But unfortunately, you were just not the coach for this basketball team. So now we're moving on. Just want to say thank you and hope you wish us luck, which you probably...
He already did. He already did wish us luck.
Yeah, but I mean, that was right after throwing that shade that we were just talking about. So it's kind of just good luck. It was,
All right. I mean, I'm taking this sincere because Brett Brown was always a genuine guy.
He is. No, he's great man.
Definitely someone whose written apology is not just another Notes app screenshot, as so many people's public statements seem to be these days.
Yeah. But so with that being said, we're going to move into the main event, which is all about the Sixers this week because
it's the fallout.
Just because there's just so much to talk about. And I'm going to start with just the big one, guys. And JJ, I'm going to come to you first. Can a new coach really no changes to the roster? Like right now. So we have a new coach. We're going to get a new coach before the end of the offseason. Can a coach come in and fix this organization?
Can a coach help Ben Simmons? I guess he can, but can a coach make Ben Simmons shoot threes if he doesn't want to? Can a coach control Joel Embiid's health and stamina? Can a coach, get Tobias Harris out of a 20% slump, in the playoffs? If so, then yeah, a coach can do it. But I don't think it's on the responsibility of a head coach. If there are no changes to the roster, I don't think it's on the responsibility of a head coach to pull the Sixers out of the mud.
Okay, that's a good play to start for sure.
I think this team has to be constructed differently. I think that's pretty apparent right now. If a new coach takes over this exact roster, I think you get pretty much the exact results. Maybe not the exact because you get a healthy Ben Simmons, but you run into the same walls and the same ceilings that you've been running into.
I agree with that.
So
I definitely think
the problem was not their coaches. Did they need a different coach? It's evident that they needed a different.
They needed
coach.
A different voice.
A different voice.
I need somebody to hold them accountable.
A new captain for the ship. But we can all sit here and agree that it wasn't Brett Brown's fault entirely.
No.
And even close to entirely. He had to deal with a lot of stuff that, create a lot of bumps in the road. So it starts with how this team is constructed. So I'm going to say no to it. Can a head coach pick this exact roster up and move it to new heights? I don't think so.
I definitely think a different head coach could have gotten better results out of what we saw because I think this series was just the culmination of yes, they were undermanned to an extent, but I think that series just it really just rang true in terms of this being the series that it was evident that Brett Brown's voice no longer carried the weight that it needed to in that locker room, right? Even from game one, after that game one defeat, you could see, even Embiid was just like, I don't want to get swept. We got to be better, right? There was no, it felt like that they were done mentally after that first game. It almost felt like they were done mentally before that series, but as a fan, I couldn't allow myself to accept
After game one,
that.
if your first reaction after game one is I don't want to get swept, you defeated yourself.
You're done. You're DOA, you are dead on arrival if that's all you're worried about is not getting swept.
He put that in his own mind.
Yeah.
Exactly. After one game.
Right, I think at this point, as a fan base, our biggest grievance with Brett is the feeling of a lack of accountability and complacency, whichever very parallel road you want to go down. Right, there was none of that. There was no fire at any point in those series. Whenever the Celtics were up 5, it could be 73. I feel like this is the most 76ers Celtics playoff score ever. There's 73-68 Boston with 5 minutes left in the third, and every single time that has transpired and all the times we've played the Celtics in the Brett Brown era, I have never once felt confident that 5 points would be erased and would be held in a Sixers advantage. Part of that is roster construction. There's no denying that Elton Brand and the Colangelo cronies are at fault here. They have a lot of explaining to do to this fan base for a lot of things just beyond roster construction, right? But as objective as I can be, I have no doubts in my mind that with a different coach, there would have been a fight. There would have been a different result. They wouldn't have gotten swept. Do they win? Who knows? Who cares? Because we're never going to know, right? This roster is going to get blown up, and quite frankly,
it should.
It should. Quite frankly, it should.
After results like this, this roster deserves to get.
Is Tobias Harris 100? Is Tobias Harris the epitome? Is he a true max player? No. Is he as bad as shooting sub 40% and averaging 13.8 points a game through 3 games of a playoff series? Definitely not. He's definitely better than that. Sticking with Tobias Harris, he was a 20-plus easily points a game scorer on the Clippers with a different coach and a different system. And I'm not saying Brett needs to totally throw everything that he's tried to work to build out the window to make Harris fit, but you got to do something to help better incorporate the guy who's eating up, such a significant part of your resources financially and in terms of investment on the court. You got to do something. There has to be a different change. There has to be something done differently there.
The biggest thing about Brett Brown, it's got to be that accountability thing of holding your stars accountable to what you believe is the best plan of action, the best course of action to your team winning. If you truly believe that Ben Simmons, I need you shooting 2 to 3 threes per game, that's how our offense is going to thrive, then just saying it once at a press conference indirectly towards him isn't the way to get it done.
Yep.
I need you in his ear. And there's plenty of reports saying that Brett Brown never got in Ben Simmons' ear. Joel, if I need you healthy, if I need you conditioning better, I am in your ear. This is unacceptable for you to be this tired in the third quarter.
Hell, at this point, I don't even care about Embiid's stamina.
Yeah.
That's something I feel like he's actively shown he can work on. The one thing that really, this is going to be my last big Brett Brown tirade because, after today, he is a part of the Sixers past. The one thing that he absolutely could never have been more wrong with is turnovers and how Joel Embiid handled the ball. And Joel Embiid's stamina is not the reason the Sixers always failed in the fourth quarter. Joel Embiid became a black hole on offense late in the game in playoff games because his stamina contributed to bad passing. So they're going to go hand in hand here. I think his stamina wasn't the biggest issue, but it's more so the fact that him not being able to properly pass out of double teams for 48 minutes, and that leads into the greater turnover issue that this team has been plagued with since day one of the Brett Brown era. And for the first 4 or 5 years, we could play it off as no talent, but the fact of the matter is the Sixers never got better than an average team in terms of taking care of the ball, and that's the number one rule of thumb in any sport. You win the turnover battle, plus or minus turnovers, takeaways, however you want to quantify it across sports. That's the easiest way to win games is just taking care of the ball. Look at your Thunder, look at the Pacers, teams that are generally regarded as less talented, but they're fundamentally more sound than the Rockets or the Sixers.
If we have the ball more to you, got more opportunities.
You're going to win the game because you have more opportunities to score. So I'm going to leave it as this. Brett Brown's biggest issue is that he never held anyone accountable, whether it was Embiid, whether it was Ben Simmons, whether it was
Front office included. And
to a big extent, himself. To a big extent, himself. He never held himself accountable for the things that the fan base clamored over him to fix. Rotation issues and turnovers were probably the biggest two. As a coach, there's only so many things you can control. You can't make Ben Simmons go out there on the court and take a 3 in the course of a game. You can't do it. You can't make Joel Embiid, do a better dieting plan or a harsher exercise routine. But you can't physically do that. You can say all the right things, but unless you're there, physically watching the guy
I bet
at
there
all
are coaches
times.
out there who can do it.
There are
coaches out
are.
there who can make Ben Simmons attempt threes.
But that shouldn't be a coach's job to be there and physically babysit.
And hey, life's unfair sometimes. And maybe it's not to fall in your job description, but if Greg Popovich needs you to do something, if Phil Jackson needs you to do something, hell, if Rick Carlisle needs you to do something, they're going to let you know this has to happen now.
My point is this, is that Brett Brown shouldn't have had to do those things, but when he got to the point that he sees that he needs to, and he does have to do those things, he never took the steps to make them actually happen. Whether it is him being the guy that does it, or saying, hey, assistant number 4, you need to be the guy who is in Ben Simmons' ear. Minute 1 to practice to the last second of practice saying, if we're shooting the basketballs, don't step inside the three-point arc, because we all seen what you can do in terms of layups and floaters from inside 10 feet. We don't care about that anymore. So it was the lack of accountability. It's an organizational standpoint. The owners are, at this point, we've made it known our thoughts on them, and they're clearly more interested in profitability than competitiveness, which a lot of owners are, and I'm not gonna kill them for it. But I will say this: that profitability comes hand in hand with success. And quite frankly, when you have a fan base this large and this passionate, if the success isn't there, that's ultimately going to kill your bottom line. Because we are quick to cut an ownership off. We are very quick. If we don't mess with you, I don't care how good that product is. People will decline in terms of their merchandise price or merchandise purchasing and their general support for the team. We supported the team that won 15 games this season because the ownership was up front with us, and they let us know what their expectations were, and they communicated with us as a fan base clearly. This current ownership has not done that. So we'll get to them soon, I'm sure, but Brett Brown was not fully at fault here.
And before we move on, I want to piggyback off that last statement. Brett Brown was not fully at fault here. We saw in his press release that he threw what James already alluded to, a slight diss. And if Brett Brown would have said...
It's a fact, not a diss.
If Brett Brown would have said this public statement instead of written it, there would have been a long pause after this statement. Of all the 102 players that I've coached in my 7 seasons. 102 players, that's 14 players a season. That is a new roster literally each and every year you are coaching. Like you said, Max, there are some things you can control as a coach. I cannot control a revolving door of not only just like role players, a revolving door of #1 picks and supposed next franchise players. These are your next best players, and only 2 of them stuck, and it was the last 2 of his 7 years. So you got
not his last one.
Well, not his last. His sorry, his third and second to last. Yeah, his third and second to last. Like the last one always escapes me. I keep forgetting about that.
Yeah.
One. How? But there's something to be said for the fact that Brett Brown has to endure a lot and took it on as a class act each and every time. So no, he didn't get the job done. You're right. He's not the coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. But I mean, you gotta give credit where credit's due, or give the man slack at some point. Like 102 players in 7 years is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's straight ridiculous.
That's a lot.
There's just so many rabbit holes to jump down, whether it be his coaching style, his lack of ability to make adjustments, the Euro style offense that it's like a hybrid Euro style that doesn't work at all. And you're right, it goes farther up, the team building. Like you see what the Bucks are doing with Giannis and how they actually... Ben Simmons created the most threes in the NBA.
He assisted the most made three-point shots. I know exactly what stat you're talking about.
What's up?
He assisted the most made three-point shots.
There's another stat. He also created the most open three-point shots in the NBA.
And threw it to not one three-point shooter this year.
Exactly. He threw it to nobody that is a knockdown shooter. So that's just, it's...
He had one. He had J.J. Redick.
Right.
It doesn't... Knockdown shooter Ben Simmons.
A lot of that doesn't fall to him. But we're going to talk about the guy right now that it might fall to. Brett Brown got the axe. The guy above him, the general manager, Elton Brand. Say what you will about the theory. In theory, it should have been a good idea. In execution, it nowhere close.
Crash and burn, right?
Like many former players with their teams.
Right, exactly. So, JJ, I'm going to come to you. Should Elton Brand have followed Brett Brown out that door? Should that door have not closed until Elton Brand also walked through it?
The only reason I say no to Elton Brand is because this is a regime that he inherited. It's not a regime that he created. The Brett Brown, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid era, he did not create. So that's just me. This is personal opinion here. Yeah. But when you're a coach or a GM and you inherit a regime, you inherit a dynamic. Whether you survive it or not, if it's not yours, if it's not like that wasn't your vision that was created, and it's quick turnover, I do think you have the ability to now bring in your guys and get it done. But if you don't bring in your guys to get it done, you got one more shift change if you're Elton Brand. Like, the leash is short. You got one more shift change, and it was the coach that went. The superstars will always outlast the coach, so it was the coach that went. So now you have an opportunity as Elton Brand to bring in the coach that you believe is going to turn this around, that's going to carry out your vision for the team. And if you bring in a coach that carries out a vision that's bad and leads to more negative results, then you get fired. But Elton Brand gets the benefit of the doubt of coming in just 2 years ago to a regime that was not his. That's the only leash that Elton Brand gets.
And you're not wrong, but it's just.
I get we don't have time to waste here, but that's the thing. If you got to move too fast, think about how much turmoil and how much turnover this team has had in the past 7 years.
But part of that falls on the GM, like for letting guys like JJ Redick leave. And I know the Jimmy Butler situation seems to be totally unique in terms of what we've seen in terms of front office treating superstars recently in terms of the last 10 years. Like, I can't really think of anybody who's had a similar situation where Jimmy Butler is, where he got traded for and then clashed with the coach like basically immediately.
The Timberwolves.
Yeah, but he didn't get. But he got traded for like outside the season, and the Timberwolves had much lower expectations than the Sixers did when he arrived at those respective situations. Right? The Sixers had already made a blockbuster trade for Tobias, they did the Jimmy Butler trade first. I'm just going to totally backtrack off that statement. Regardless, Elton Brand has unquestionably made in the 2 years that he has been at the helm, or at least has been touted as being at the helm, because we all know that he's kind of the poster boy in terms of the ownership council or whatever they call it to decide these situations. So,
which is a new thing.
Exactly, Elton Brand, the general manager, in terms of deciding on personnel, it seems like he's making bad decisions, but how can I judge a guy if he's just being touted as the face of a group of 3 or 4 or 5 or however many of there are of them making those decisions? Because whoever's in charge of bringing in Al Horford in here.
Oh, that's what I was getting to.
That's a fireable offense.
The whole staff needs to go. Those were the analytics guys and the guys behind the scenes. I can't.
Those are the Colangelo cronies that I'm talking about, because most of those guys are still here. They're the ones that need to go.
Exactly.
A team and a structure that Elton Brand inherited.
And that's why I have issue.
Right. No,
that's why I have issue saying Elton Brand. The singular needs to go. Because Elton Brand, the group, whether that's Elton Brand and whoever's involved with that, the Sixers' general front office decision-making has been piss poor the last 2 years when Elton Brand has been the front of it and the face of it.
Well, and he also had to pick up midway through Brett Brown being the de facto GM. Like, not only did he get a middling owner in Josh Harris, who is trying to buy the Devils and the Mets. The only way I'm cool with that is if you buy the Mets and run them into
treat them like you are the Sixers.
Literally run them into the ground worse than you are the Sixers. But you have to deal with did I say Middleton?
I don't know.
Josh Harris.
Whoever you said.
Has to deal with Josh Harris and Blitzer, and then the cronies of Colangelo, who need to find a new slant that's not professional basketball scouting. And Brett Brown's de facto GM work, he has not had a term as a GM yet.
That's what I'm saying. Until you let Elton Brand, until you let a GM be a GM, and at least for Elton Brand, that means taking over all basketball operations, player personnel, and everything under that umbrella, then he doesn't have a fair shake. And if you keep firing guys, or I won't say keep, but if you fire a guy or fire multiple guys.
You keep changing, because there wasn't even so many firings.
It was just
you
keep rearranging
revolving door with the rosters, revolving door with the GM position.
Nothing's good. You need solid ground to stand on.
Yeah.
So if you let Elton Brand be the GM, and that means take control of what a GM should take control of, then we'll see. I'm not saying it's going to be good. I'm saying that's what should happen.
I am cool with the idea of Elton Brand, this person, the singular entity person, being in charge of basketball operations for the Sixers. But as of the way things stand right now, I would much prefer Elton Brand, the persona of that whole front office. I would prefer Elton Brand to be the one to publicly fall on the sword for the whole front office to be cleaned out in terms of those making basketball roster decisions.
That's
interesting.
Fair. So you're saying that if Elton Brand takes the fault, you're cool with firing everybody in the front office if
it means Elton Brand being the one who takes the fall singularly in the public eye. Because
I can get behind that.
If you have him take fault, then you have to at least give him a chance to correct the mistake afterwards.
That's what I'm saying. I think that this might be his chance to correct whatever has been done wrong, but I I would prefer the lesser of two evils, which is the whole front staff being cleaned out and Elton Brand being the one to publicly take the fall because he's been named the GM.
You get one shift change.
That's a lot to ask of a man to fall.
It is. That's unreasonable, but I think perfect world, that would be what I would like to see happen, because that would mean we have totally new, fresh faces besides ownership in terms of making our basketball decisions.
To me, you get one shift change. I keep saying you get one more. Elton, I get that wasn't your guy. I get this wasn't your regime.
He was covering for someone and shit hit the fan.
And also think about how Elton Brand took over. It wasn't a smooth transition.
It wasn't clean.
It wasn't even off of a firing that the Sixers wanted to happen. It was off of a reactionary firing of a scandal. And they had to quickly do it because Brett Brown being the de facto GM wasn't going to last long. So we need to get
it doesn't work in basketball like it does in football.
We need to get someone in here quick. So Elton Brand was brought in a haste to a situation where he had to try to make sense of a whole bunch of chaos that was going on around him. So give the man a fresh shot.
So you brought up a good point in letting him clean up the mess that is there, which I think is a very fair. He deserves that shot. He was put into a tough situation, let's say. So now, going forward, his biggest, probably the biggest offseason of his career, no matter how long he is a GM of any basketball team in this league, this is a huge offseason. Number one starts with the hiring of a new coach. Number two is how you construct this roster going forward. But we're going to stick with that coach part.
I almost say the roster should go first.
Oh, that's I
almost say you got to take care of the roster first.
Well, you got to figure out how
as long as you're kicking people out the door, keep momentum that way. If people got to go, people got to go.
Well, now you got to figure out what the coach's philosophy is and then build the roster. So we'll stick with that coaching topic. And I have this lower third titled "Stepping Over Other Candidates."
Oh no! Well done.
And I scoffed at this news.
You
and
shouldn't.
I scoffed.
I'm with it.
I scoffed at this news.
I'm with you, dude.
Ty Lue, is being rumored as having mutual interest with the Sixers to become their new to be their new head coach. I scoff. That's a pure scoff for me.
Scoff?
But Max,
I'm scoffing.
Max, I'm going to toss it to you, man, because
I'll take it from here. For me, and I have a feeling maybe subconsciously this is what you feel like too. As guys who are Flyers fans that just went through ownership going with the guy to lead this operation from building a team from scratch to a championship contender who's never really had top level, pro level coaching experience, right? This is what the Sixers just did with Brett Brown for 7 years. This is what the Flyers did with their last coach, Dave Haxall, for 4. Okay, right? What we have seen is a team that has promise and has potential and has talent never figure out their same issues repeatedly. So at this point, speaking for myself personally, Jim, please feel free to chime in if you agree. I want someone who is proven. I don't want Are you really going to sit here?
Don't tell me that Ty
Are you
Lue is
going to sit
proven.
here and try
Do
and tell me
not do
that Ty Lue is proven after
Please
the
don't do
Cavaliers
this.
title run?
Please
I am
don't
not.
do this.
I'm not even going to entertain.
Was he not the coach who was a part of a 3-1 comeback?
Stop.
Are you serious,
You can
dude?
say
Stop.
what you want. Dude, I was going to let you finish. I'm going
to finish. I'm going to let you go so I can tell you how bad your take is.
Here's the thing.
Ridiculous.
I understand who he coached. I understand he coached a LeBron-led team. I understand this. But if you're going to sit here and scoff at a coach who not only won a championship, won a NBA championship
Had
as a
front row
coach,
seats to LeBron and Kyrie winning a title,
and a player, there are many coaches coached LeBron James, coached those same Cavs teams, didn't win a championship. David Blatt didn't win a championship.
David Blatt got the worse hand than Tyronn Lue did.
Coached the same core. Tyronn Lue took over the next season, midway through the next season, led him on a title run. So you're going to scoff at someone who's won an NBA championship as a coach and a player. Remind me, how many coaches have you watched win a championship, Max, as a Sixers head coach? How many?
None.
Oh, so why would you scoff at one who comes along who has won a championship? That's championship.
Me or
pedigree.
You or him could have gotten a ring for being the coach for that Cavs team. Come on, dude.
Pedigree. We're watching a team in the Toronto Raptors right now feeding off of championship pedigree. Were any of those players on the Raptors the biggest reason they won the championship last year?
No.
But
their coach was.
But they are feeding off of championship pedigree. They all still have it in their DNA. Tyronn Lue still has that in his DNA. You can say that you don't want him to be your coach. That's fine.
I don't. I truly don't.
That's fine. To scoff at an NBA champion, to scoff at a head coach of an NBA championship team is disrespectful, especially when your championship or when your franchise hasn't won one. Especially when you haven't watched your franchise win one.
Why would I have any faith? Why would I have any faith or have anyone in a guy that literally...
He doesn't have to be your coach, Max. But to scoff at him is disrespectful. If you get through everybody, if every other head coaching candidate gets plucked off and Tyronn Lue is still there, you're saying you still don't want him.
At that point, in your scenario, I'm not going to have a choice, but damn right, I'm not going to be happy with that hire.
That is disrespectful.
Okay.
That's disrespectful.
Tyronn Lue, I appreciate your contributions to the game of
especially
basketball.
for a franchise who hasn't hired a coach to win a championship in 30 years now. You're going to scoff at one who had? He's won 2, Max. He has a ring as a player and as a coach.
Let's not talk, dude, don't bring up the player.
The ring as a player is insane.
Like, that's the championship pedigree's done it before. But like,
there's a difference between championship pedigree and being on a championship team.
Yeah.
No, there isn't. That's the same thing. That's the same statement.
Really?
Championship pedigree and being on a championship team is the same thing. No one's sitting here and saying Tyronn Lue was the biggest reason for either of those championships. I'm not saying that. But he contributed to both of them. He knows what it takes to get to the mountaintop. Even if he just sat there and did it, he still knows.
That's exactly what he did.
He still knows what it takes to get there to the top. None of your coaches have sat there and done it. None.
None of my coaches have had LeBron James in his prime.
And Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love at the same time.
Look, so he knows what it takes to cultivate great players. He knows what it takes. He knows what
he didn't cultivate any of them.
He knows what it takes out of a superstar.
My man's getting the Tyronn Lue check in the mail coming soon in the next couple days.
No. I just know sports, and I'm not going to scoff at someone who won a championship. Championships don't come every day.
I'm not going to scoff at him winning a championship, but you are high as hell, my friend, if you think I'm not going to scoff at the idea of that man being the answer to the Sixers getting over the championship.
Dude, he's the Eli Manning of basketball.
I am sorry if you think that he is a legitimate step up and automatically makes the Sixers a better coach team, because in my mind, I really don't think so.
So then why is he an assistant? So then why is he an assistant right now?
In a fight with Jason Kidd to get that head coaching job.
We're not even going to go into the Jason Kidd. We're not even
going
to
take Tyronn Lue if it means not getting Jason Kidd, dude. You can quote me on that.
He's in a
fight
with Jason Kidd when Frank Vogel goes. That's why he's
quite honestly with you, I'm not really enamored with any of the coaching candidates out there. This was a bad year to fire your head coach.
Dave Yeager is my preferred candidate.
And even then, he still got. Sorry, just to address this point.
Dave Yeager?
You're telling me you wouldn't take Dave Yeager over Tyronn Lue?
Dave Yeager, the Grizzlies. Dave Yeager, come on.
Did Dave Yeager win a championship?
Oh my goodness!
Oh my God, dude!
Dude,
we're not doing it. You got to be joking me.
I'm not. Here's my only point.
Dude.
Dave Yeager is a good option. Please don't sit here and try to twist my words. Dave Yeager is a good option for a head coach. Tyronn Lue is also a good option for a head coach.
I would say he's an option.
To scoff at Tyronn Lue, but to happily welcome Dave Yeager doesn't make sense to me.
All right, JJ, I'm going to save us all a bunch. I'm going to save us all a bunch of energy here. Listen, your guy Tyronn Lue is good for a certain scenario, and this plays out in soccer a lot. This is what happens when a player who has been at the top. Tyronn Lue won a title as a player. He knows what it takes to get there as a player. That does earn you respect from players, but he is not the kind of guy that can take a roster that needs to learn how to make the step from good team to great team. He is a guy that can take over a roster that already has greatness in it and can guide them to and through a title series. Because he is not, let's be honest with ourselves, dude. You can't sit here and tell any one of these cameras looking at us that Tyronn Lue was the mastermind behind that Cavs offense. No. That Cavs offense was a lot of LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love. You guys go be better than the guy guarding you and get us points along the way. And the rest of you guys, you fill in where you need to. J.R. Smith, whoever else is on the floor with the three others, sit in the corner and wait for the ball to be passed to you and either shoot if you're open.
See, you started good, but now you're going too far in the other way of Tyronn Lue not doing anything to help coach that team. Stuff still has to move.
Minimal. He did minimal work. You said it yourself. He joined that team 3/4 of the way through the season. You don't have time to implement your offensive system. You're running with what works at that point. And let's be honest with ourselves. The next year, maybe he didn't have Kyrie and Kevin Love had taken a step back, but they were a bad team offensively in the regular season. They got carried by LeBron. That team the year after Kyrie left was terrible on offense.
Good.
They were terrible on offense. And that is what I see when I look at the Sixers roster. Not a team with the best player in the game, a top 10 player, and a top 20 player who, even though he had regressed mentally to more like a top 30 to 40 player. The Sixers don't have that kind of luxury on this roster. We're talking about how bad the roster is. You can't give a guy who needs a constructed roster and the freedom to not have to work too hard with it to get the best out of his players. You can't give him a situation like the Sixers and expect that to go well. That's why I'm not enthused about Tyronn Lue as the coach of the Sixers. Let him go, hypothetically speaking, if Milwaukee decides to fire
let him take Frank Vogel's job.
He would be great for Milwaukee because they have greatness in that roster. They just need someone who's been like, hey, I've been there as a player and a coach. I can get us through this. He's not a fit for the Sixers. He just isn't. I would take Dave Yeager 11 times out of 10 for this current Sixers job.
Max, that was extremely well said.
Thank you.
That was well put. That was well put. And
I'm done. We're done with the coach talk for me.
If you want Dave Yeager over Tyronn Lue, you have my full endorsement. That is fine. I just need Tyronn Lue's name not to be dragged through the mud because he had LeBron James and Kyrie.
I won't drag it through the mud for the player.
To lead a team as a head coach to a championship is nothing short of an amazing accomplishment. Thousands of coaches are never going to get to feel that satisfaction, and he did it. Thousands of coaches who have coached all-time greats will never feel that satisfaction. You
cannot take that away from him.
Come on now. Jerry Sloan. Jerry Sloan coached maybe the best point guard and the second all-time leading scorer of all time.
Let's not put Tyronn Lue and Jerry Sloan in the same conversation.
I'm not putting him in Jerry Sloan's category. I'm giving you an example of thousands of coaches have coached great players and not won a championship.
Larry Brown. I get you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
We get you. We respectfully disagree about your assessment of Tyronn Lue and his coaching capability.
We do. Yes, we
do.
Leave
it at that.
So hopefully Dave Yeager steps over a couple of candidates, but
to throw a late name in there, Kenny Atkinson, just the job I saw him doing with the young Brooklyn Nets team.
I would be intrigued. I definitely would.
And
also totally baseless out coaching. I feel like Stan maybe more so.
Stan Van Gundy has had his hands on successful teams.
I agree. Yes. I think you could.
This is literally asinine. Mauro Chalmers got benched at the end of that year for Norris.
I'm glad I said Jeff Van Gundy now. I'm glad I said those three.
Yeah, no, that's good. So we're gonna move on, and this.
You got me started.
There's been
series. Granted, Iverson
lost extreme emotional low.
Yeah. Iverson lost a much different series than Embiid lost. Iverson losing the first round, lost in the finals. But X, Y, and Z were the circumstance. But we will get this fixed moving forward.
So I can't imagine that he wants to leave. That's my hope. That's my want. I hope that for his sake the front office does him right because it is going to hit a point where it's like
Game 4 they kind of almost went belly up at the end.
It was again that
they
thing
showed Spurs.
That's very, very fair. So it's at this point it's kind of one of those things where we have to take a step back and
it kind of crashed and burned while you see Jimmy Butler thriving a little bit in Miami. And after a failed mission, going back to kind of my last statement on the Joel Embiid point, that's what you get when you get negative results. It's
to see what this situation has to offer and he doesn't take it straight up, then there are always going to be underlying issues there. He clearly is not fully sold on all aspects of what's going on.
And James, you said it. If you know we can offer you the most money. So if you turn this down, you don't want to be here.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be here,
you don't want to be here unequivocally more than you don't want to be anywhere else.
Thank you. We need to turn our attention elsewhere. And their attention elsewhere immediately went to unfortunately, Al Horford, but their attention went elsewhere.
Yep.
And their statement was correct. Jimmy Butler did not want to be in Philadelphia. He made that clear. So I think sometimes you got to let business be business. And they threw everything else out the window and said, business on paper says you want this money, if a payday is what you're looking for, and a chance to win a championship, we offer all that.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here.
To me, that was just their unofficial response to everybody saying that Elton Brand should be fired too. That was their preemptive unofficial response.
And I'm with you, Max. I'm like I defend the Sixers front office a little bit with that. Like I see where they went with the Jimmy Butler thing.
Yeah.
Their hands were tied.
Hey, I guess
we outvote you 2-1. Doesn't usually happen.
That's very, very true. So we're gonna move on, but. I don't have a score update as of yet because they are at commercial. Yeah, what do we?
It's 1-0.
Yeah, 1-0 still. Hey, they're the better version of the Habs. We knew this was going to be a tough series. They get harder and harder as they go, and of course we are talking about the Flyers and Islanders series that is game 1 is underway. And with that being said, we're going to do it until they either win their cup or they're sent home. So, gentlemen, here we are presenting Minute with Max.
All right. I mean, there's not too much else to say because the Flyers are already 2 periods deep into their kickoff game in this series. Just to give you guys a quick preview of what to expect, you kind of hit the nail right on the head in terms of the Islanders kind of play almost like I don't want to say a light version of the Canadiens because they're better, so maybe a heavier version of the Canadiens.
Yep.
I will say this, the big irregularity of this series is the fact that the Islanders' defense and goalie has really been playing far above what they showed in the regular season, which is pretty dangerous because the Flyers struggled against them this year. They went 0-3, or excuse me, they went 0-2-1, which is 2 losses in regulation and an overtime loss against the Islanders in the 3 games they were able to play before the COVID shutdown happened. They were slated to play the Islanders in the canceled stretch of games before the end of the season when they were playing their best. And actually, the Islanders were one of the teams that started off doing really well and kind of, I don't want to say faltered because they still made the playoffs relatively comfortably. But they were a team that had started off as actually one of the top 3 seeds until 2.5 months-ish through the season.
They came out hot.
They came out really hot. They actually were one of the best teams through the first month of the season. I actually think they were number 1.
Because of their coaching change.
They were number 1 in the East. I think they were number 2 in overall record.
They were.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for having my back on this.
Yes.
Anyway, what you're looking for is this. Regular season history would indicate that we're probably expecting, all 3 of the matchups that they played in the regular season all went over 6 total goals. You would assume to expect that to similarly, go in that same kind of fashion. I'm going to tell you this: expect more boring games. It's 1-0 through 2 periods right now. Expect to see a lot of 2-1s. Maybe 3-2 is the highest scoring games we're going to see. Maybe there'll be that one-off game like we had against the Canadiens where it did finish 5-3. But the fact of the matter is the Islanders' defense really locked down on the Capitals. The Capitals were pretty uninspiring when the restart happened. But their goalie is playing well above his regular season averages. Their defenses are playing well above the regular season averages. They gave up almost over 3 goals on average a game during the regular season. In the playoffs, that's down to where the Flyers are at in the just under 2.7 range. So a big difference, right? Not the biggest sample size, but definitely a big difference in general to know that the Islanders now are not the Islanders from the regular season. So, if you wanted high-scoring playoff hockey, sorry, probably not the best series for you. Maybe go check out the Lightning Bruins if you were looking for a little bit more scoring on a night-to-night basis, because those 2 teams are, seem to put up big numbers whenever they play each other, regardless of time of year. I'll say this. There's going to be a lot of weird games. There are going to be the games where the Flyers get crapped on. Like tonight, they haven't been playing that well in terms of their offense. Their defense has looked great. If the defense shows up like it is tonight, they'll be fine in the series. If the offense shows up like it is tonight, I'm not so sure.
The boys are not going to be buzzing this series.
I will say this. I will leave it at this because this Flyers team, like I've said multiple times, they are too deep. They are too deep to just continually not score. So I'll say this, Flyers in 7, because somehow, again, we got the worst matchup we could have asked for. Any one of the 3 teams that we played in the round-robin matchup, I would have preferred to play, especially after seeing how poorly the Capitals played against the Islanders. So I will say Flyers in 7.
I was also going to go Flyers in 7. Yeah.
There are going to be some high highs and some low lows after this. I have a feeling this game could be a 2-0 Islanders victory, and I already know that the people throughout social media are gonna start jumping down throats like they did after game 1.
They're jumping right off the bandwagon.
Exactly.
As soon as they tie up the series 1-1, they're coming right back.
Stay the course. Just as easy as this game, the Flyers can look terrible. Trust the process. Trust the process. We're going to leave it at that. Trust the process.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Flyers in 7.
It's going to be a tough series, like you said.
It would have been nice if I could have done this before, because now I'm like they're going to do great. Flyers in 6. They're going to have some good games. But now I'm like, all right, well, game 1, forget it. 6 game series.
Imagine if they still had Tavares.
Yeah.
Like that's
it's crazy
tough.
the Maple Leafs aren't in the playoffs, which is hilarious.
That's a deep rabbit hole to jump down.
No one cares. Literally no one cares.
Literally nobody cares.
Literally nobody cares.
I'm surprised that this Montreal team that we just played is going to be tough for a while. They are a good young team. They're scrappy. They gave us.
This will be a series that makes them hungry.
Exactly, which is not what I like to see because we put ourselves on their radar.
Thankfully, at some point they're going to have to get a new goalie because Carey Price is getting up there.
I don't know, man.
Goalie's a position you can do it at.
Brodeur stayed around for.
Goalie's a position you can do it at.
Well, I mean, the Niskanen hit to Gallagher breaking his jaw. We are not on the Habs' good side for a while.
Whatever. They can plot revenge all summer.
Hey man, our guys are getting up there too. Voracek, I mean, he was the only one of the top guys that actually came out firing.
None of the top guys besides him have really done much. Sorry, JJ. You can join back in a second.
Hazy got one at the end. It wasn't the best goal in the world. Konechny is really struggling.
Konechny got super unlucky earlier today. He had a wide open net. Someone did the bowling, when you follow through on bowling and your back leg goes out.
Yep.
One of the Islanders defenders did that and saved the wide open net. So
that's
inches away from a 1-1 game.
G got a couple assists, but we need him to get going. Cooch has been.
Once the offense picks up, they're gonna have any issues. The fact that they're holding the Islanders.
I don't know if we can say once though. You know what I mean? We haven't seen the top guys get rolling.
That's what I'm saying. It's not just one game. They need to get rolling.
Because
if they don't get rolling, even if they make it out of this round somehow, you can't rely on 11 goals in 6 games through 3 series.
No, you can't rely on Nate Thompson to be. You can't rely on Nate Thompson to center your best line. That's not. It's not possible. But that was Minute with Max. Turns out to be more than a minute because the Flyers are fun to talk about. JJ, right? Flyers are fun to talk about.
Gotta love it.
Gotta love it. That's the enthusiasm we're looking for.
Shout out to the Thunder.
Shout out to Thunder.
Shout out to Thunder.
So we're gonna move on to rapid fire, gentlemen. And as always, rapid fire is not going to be rapid, but that's fine because we're
going to be rapid.
Because we have fun here.
Rapid fire.
We have fun here.
Can we agree this is the quickest rapid fire ever?
Well, I'm tired. To be honest, I'm tired of calling it rapid fire and it not be rapid. If it's not going to be rapid fire, then let's just call it like the second half.
We have fire. We have fun here. All right. So first one, Max. Biggest upset prediction in the rest of these NBA Finals. Go.
Wow. Biggest. Heat over Bucks in 6.
Heat over Bucks in 6.
A nice one.
Wow. Okay, JJ. Biggest upset.
I'm gonna go Jazz over Clippers if they both make it to next year. Jazz
over.
Up 3-1.
I wouldn't have been mad at you for saying Mavericks over Clippers.
Jazz up 3-1. I do still think the Clippers win this probably in 6 or 7 now in a late series. But the Jazz are up over the Nuggets right now 3-1, and they would play the Clippers.
We weren't having any fun first-round playoff series in that Clippers-Mavs series delivered.
Yep.
Yeah, no, seriously. That
the East has been so boring. The East has already done 3 series.
Well, hey, the Rockets are a fun series. The Blazers-Lakers is a fun series.
Well, no, he said the East.
Oh, in the East.
I did mean in general, but
the Magic.
The East has been overbearingly boring.
The Magic, I thought were going to do something.
The Lakers are going. That's going to be a series that ends up not being that fun because the Lakers, if the Lakers lose tonight, that's an embarrassment. They can't lose with the Kobe jerseys on Kobe's birthday. So after this series goes 3-1,
no one losing to Damian Lillard right now.
They already lost to Damian Lillard once. The Blazers were the first game after the Kobe's death, and they lost that. That is literally not going to happen tonight.
That's true.
That is literally it is figuratively impossible for the Lakers.
Gave him 40 on Kobe.
Yeah. Dame lit them up in Staples Center on the Kobe death game. So I'm going to say the Lakers turn the series 3-1 after tonight. The Jazz seemed to have no issues with slicing up the Nuggets because that game's been fun to watch, but it hasn't been a very competitive series. Donovan Mitchell's already put up 50 twice in 4 games, so we're relying on the Clippers Mavericks to give us a competitive, fun series.
All right. Hey, JJ, should the Phillies be sellers?
Ooh.
No.
My man. Good answer.
Like, simple as no. It's like what? No. Like I started to go down the path of maybe unload some people, try to flip somebody, but you got to stand on solid ground if you're the Phillies right now.
Dude, I'm a firm believer that at this point, I say just go for it and be buyers. Go find a selling team that is willing to give up relievers cheap. Because
you got nothing to sell.
And that's the
issue because you don't really have too much to sell, but you have shown the propensity to buy in worse situations than this. Think about it like this: you want to hear a not so fun stat about the Phillies? In the Phillies' last 8 losses, they have had a lead at some point. In the last 8 losses, they've had a lead of some kind at some point. Thankfully, those aren't all bullpen blows, but the doubleheader against Toronto, the day-night doubleheader against Toronto, is going to be a sickening moment to revelate on for the rest of this Phillies season.
Soul-crushing.
That should have been a 2-0 game. They should be They should have been feeling good about themselves. Now they find themselves just getting
you
out
had
of
a
the
5-game win streak. You just sweep the Mets, you go to Buffalo, and you lose a doubleheader to a young upstart team.
And that game kickstarts what ends up being a 5-game losing streak.
The back-to-back losses against the Orioles, right before that 5-game.
At least the Orioles are good this year. The Blue Jays are playing in a minor league ballpark in Buffalo.
Without their best player.
Without their best player.
And
their best pitcher, I think, right?
Maybe
not their best pitcher, but I think.
No, Pearson was up. Hyunjin Roo's still around.
I mean, Stroman's now not
on the
playing
Mets.
baseball.
Stroman's on the Mets.
Well, he's not. He's done. He opted
Yeah.
out.
It's like it.
Maybe I was thinking of Stroman not being there for them. And regardless, the Blue Jays somehow the Blue Jays are worse than the Orioles this year. They still shouldn't have lost to the Orioles, but those are just sick. It literally hurts my stomach to think about those two games.
Well, I mean, you had a chance to win all 3 of those Oriole games too, as well. Or no, two of 3 because one was just an absolute blowout.
Yeah.
But it's really tough. And then Atlanta, I'll give Atlanta a lot of credit because a lot of their.
I'm so glad that we're already going to be done 6 or 7 of our Atlanta games in the first
quarter.
Well,
Atlanta's won 7 of their wins. They've won in the last at bat.
Yeah.
So I will give Atlanta. I'll give Atlanta all the credit in the world. But it's.
I couldn't believe that they didn't blow out last night.
I mean.
It took,
we're not. Yeah,
took a game-saving relay
broken
to get
clock
it done,
right twice a day or twice a week if you're a Phillies bullpen.
Honestly, I trust Heath Hembry with my life now since
the bullpen didn't do it.
Hey, Hembry came in and pitched 1 2/3 innings of scoreless
it took
ball.
a perfect relay to win that game.
Yeah, it really
took a perfect relay.
And honestly, you know what, guys? I have been one of the biggest Andrew Knapp detractors, but I got to say it, this version of Andrew Knapp is a extremely serviceable bat. Dude,
I saw Andrew Knapp scream. I was like, I love that.
That's what I need. And you know what? That's why I like Brandon Workman. Because when Brandon Workman lost that game after Hector Neris had left him with 2 runners on, he was visibly upset.
Yeah.
He walked up visibly upset, went into the clubhouse, and patted Hector Neris on the back and said, you know what, man? I'm sorry. That's on me. That's the guy I want on my team. Everybody else gives up a 3-run shot and walks off with their head down going, you know what, I guess I have to figure something out. You know what? No, I want fire. That Andrew Knapp, he's hitting 450 right now. He makes an incredible 2-hop play from Roman Quinn, which, by the way, if anybody else in the center, if anybody else in the center field that's not Roman Quinn, that game's over.
I gotta say, when Girardi puts his faith in Roman Quinn, it does seem to pay off on the days that he does.
Hey, look,
Freddie
Freeman hit a screamer.
When it does pay off, it pays off big.
Yes.
Freddie Freeman hit a screamer, and I couldn't believe Roman Quinn got to it before it hit the wall.
Yeah. No, that's if anybody else besides Roman Quinn is there, that game's over. So you know what? Andrew Knapp, very serviceable backup catcher. I'm with it. Very cool. This one's tough. Last one, rapid fire. There's been a lot of negative news around Philadelphia Eagles camp just relating to injuries. I'm going to go down a little bit of a list for you guys.
A list. I love
It's
lists.
not fun. These are just the big names, not even mentioning.
Oh, it's going to hurt so bad for you.
I'll let you know which ones shock me.
Okay. Miles Sanders is still week to week.
Doesn't matter. He's young. Doesn't want to get him. Doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not going to comment on all of them.
That's not the response I expected.
Week to week
at
for a
all.
second.
But okay,
they're just keeping him out.
Lane Johnson and Andre Dillard are still not practicing.
I don't like hearing that, Dillard.
Go ahead, keep going.
These are still not these responses. Goddard has a fractured thumb, which he caught a touchdown pass today, but he hit it on somebody's helmet coming down.
That shocks me a little bit.
Who cares?
And then Malik Jackson returns to practice him in a limited fashion. He's still banged up, but Javon Hargrave is out for a couple weeks.
We're talking about
and by when I say a couple weeks, this is not
17 days till kickoff. Couple weeks is season.
A couple weeks is second, third week of the season.
These are guys who racked up frequent flyer miles on the injury list.
So the question then becomes, JJ, I'm going to start off with you because Max, I don't know where you're going to go with this, but what position group are you most worried about? And it doesn't have to be the position groups I listed because there are still question marks in the linebacker group. There are still question marks with the receiver group.
I'm less worried about the wide receiver group because you're coming off a draft where you guys were
Jalen Reagor looks good.
Yeah,
my boy Jalen Reagor.
And apparently all talks at camp, which let's be honest,
it's camp. Everyone looks good at camp.
Talks at camp. Everyone looks good at camp. Your number one draft pick, but the fact that you already have the injury to Jason Peters to Brandon Brooks that have already stated moving Jason Peters. I'm worried about the offensive line. Yeah. You have 2 big names again on your offensive line, and Andre Dillard is now in a prime backup role. Andre Dillard is
a starter.
He's always
a
starter now since Jason Peters moved to
guard.
to the right guard position. So you have him and Lane Johnson out, or among cultivating injuries, that's the worrisome list right there.
All right.
I would say position. See, singular player. I'm going to say Dillard because you never want to see your young offensive lineman not be. It's different if it's your young running back because you want to minimize any bit of contact you can.
That's
right.
And running backs normally are week to week.
Exactly.
Like running backs, even in the middle of the season.
Dillard is different because this is the year.
So much hits.
This is the year he's expected to step up into the every down left tackle role. You want him to be in there for every single rep.
Every rep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he needs every rep. So for a singular player, I'm going to say Dillard. For position, I'm going to say defensive tackle because we saw how bad our defense as a whole struggled, and obviously our roster on defense is better than it was last year. I'll say marginally in terms of the overall talent.
In the back end, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of overall talent available, I'll say the talent level is a little bit higher. Obviously, more question marks, players moving around, new players coming in.
I mean, what linebackers are there?
Well, I feel like I'm higher on Nate Gary than you. I feel like he's a guy that's been steadily progressing
on special teams.
We're really going to do. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think he was like an amazing PFF player linebacker of the week.
He's a good third linebacker.
Yeah, and I don't know. He's going to have to take the step up. I feel like, I don't know. Personally, I just have the belief that he's a guy that I've seen evolve and get better, go from backup special teamer to a guy who has actually been serviceable as a starting linebacker when he needs to, right? So I'm going to hope that they can keep getting things right on that end. What I'm getting at is this, that last year we had no depth at defensive tackle. We were having guys rotate in on a week-in, week-out basis next to Fletcher Cox. We couldn't dominate the run like we've been able to and have been accustomed to, quite frankly, under Jim Schwartz's defense. When you're accustomed to being able to do one specific thing really good, you don't need to worry about
Jim Schwartz's defense. You need to dominate the run.
Exactly, because
to blitz so much, you need to put people in passing.
Paragraph 1 of Jim Schwartz's defensive playbook is we dominate the run, and then it goes into the complicated stuff because we're just so used to having a dominant up.
I'm so used to just sending 4.
Yeah.
Exactly. And last year we really struggled when teams could double Fletcher Cox or even triple Fletcher Cox. Our ends took a step back last year, and we had nobody commanding respect from the second defensive tackle position, which trickled down into all the cornerback issues we had, and we don't have good enough linebackers to cover for it.
The results were good when they experimented with moving Brandon Graham inside and letting Josh Sweat.
But you can't get away with that on a down-by-down basis.
Why not?
Brandon Graham's not big enough.
He could be a hybrid 3-tech. There was a lot. Last year was probably the most we've seen of people standing up their DNs, hovering them over guards, and sending the pressure from the inside.
But that's not feasible on a down-by-down, every down basis.
A lot of teams did it for 2 straight downs.
2 straight down? I don't know. I personally don't. Schwartz has shown that he's not going to do that.
Once you get past 2 downs, you bring in your pass rushers and get the big nose tackles off the field.
I guess in theory that's not the worst thing ever, but that brings me right back to defensive tackle being a position of question. When we say that Brandon Graham needing to slide over to defensive tackle and produce like a defensive.
You're right. That's not. Yes, you're right.
So thank you for helping me stream my point. Where defensive tackle is still the position that I'm ultimately most worried about because it's a position that we rely on so heavily. Right? Everyone relies on their offensive tackles to not let their quarterback get creamed, every single passing down. Right? That's natural game planning. But there's a difference. Every team relies on certain positions more than others, and the Eagles rely on their defensive line more than probably any other position on either side of the field to to the extent of that position, obviously.
The trenches is how they won that Super Bowl.
Exactly. And that's the
deep rotational depth.
That's
on
the
the
scheme
line
that we run.
Yeah.
Jim Schwartz.
I'm not sure if the trenches is how they won the Super Bowl.
What?
That's how they won the Super Bowl?
The Super Bowl game
41 to
itself.
33?
That's how
The Super Bowl game.
That's how we
behind
constructed
that
a
run.
team that was good enough to make it to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
What was most?
I'm thinking the singular game.
No.
Trenches won a 41 to 33 game.
That's
what?
like that. The depth on
We would not have survived the full season
And
playing.
you're correct.
The depth on
over
both of those
65
lines
total
was
points.
what was behind that.
You're good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick with that. Dillard is my big question mark as a player, and defensive tackle is going to be my worry as a position.
All right,
I'm also going to watch what I think might be the revolving door of that second safety position.
I was going to bring that up.
If Jalen Mills doesn't pan out, then you got to go to Will Parks, then you got to go to Kevon Wallace, and that's just a lot of rotation going up in the back end in your safety net. So
I don't understand why they moved Mills to safety instead of someone like LeBlanc or Maddox.
LeBlanc, no. LeBlanc has been at times the one with the most promise as a corner, in terms of
I would say that was Maddox.
or it's to like the year we played the Bears in the playoffs. I would say Maddox was the guy who was him. But last year LeBlanc was the one that was the one stepping up and making good coverage.
Well, what
plays.
I could see is if you put Jalen Mills back there and you give him.
I mean, he's just familiar with safety. He played it at college.
Played it in college, and you could tell he plays cornerback, like a lot of peeking in the backfield. You could do that as a safety. As a cornerback, you have a responsibility of following somebody around the field.
That's fair.
Well,
I mean, he's got to be
He's got to be better at tackle. Like the tackling for Jalen Mills back there at safety is what worries me.
See, and that's why I don't like it.
The last line of your defense has to be able to tackle.
That's why I don't like it, because you have your free safety type safety with McLeod. He needs to be the box guy. He needs to be the hybrid who can play down at the line, who can play back.
The two people you brought in to help fill the safety role don't know a complex defense like Jim Schwartz. So I'm not sure if Jalen Mills was put back there as you are the guy right now and it's your job to lose. But you got to default to the guy who's been in the defense for the last 2 or 3 seasons.
I'm still sticking with my gut that Kevon Wallace is going to be.
I think he's going to play early and often.
Going to be a contributor. However you want to classify.
I've heard Dabo Swinney really toot the horn of a couple of players, and they were Deshaun Watson and
he basically said the same things about Deshaun Wallace.
Yeah, he said about Kevon
Wallace from a defense.
Kevon Wallace played everywhere on that defense.
He said Kevon Wallace was one of the most pivotal players of that championship team.
He played everywhere. I can't. I brought it up to you, Max. I can't get over how badly this organization has neglected linebackers since Jeremiah Trotter.
Yeah. I mean, hey, Nigel Bradham's a free agent again.
Yeah, but you saw what you got with Nigel Bradham. Like Nigel Bradham's a serviceable weak side linebacker. Like that is what it is.
I mean, there's no superstars available just to pick up off the waiver wire, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the draft.
They should have done more at the draft.
Now that's not to say the kid out of Colorado, Davion Taylor, I believe it is. Kid is a freak athlete. But
you can't rely on one rookie to.
Who's to say he's not going to turn out to be something down the road?
Yeah.
But
it's unfair. It's unfair to any rookie in any sport to expect them to come in and carry up. There's a difference between being able to expect them to come in, maybe start and contribute from day one. There's also a difference between that and it leading a whole position group from day one.
And you're putting a lot of stock in Nate Jerry. But it's
a lot
of stock in Nate Jerry. And I want to say how
Nate Jerry truthers unite.
How fortunate are the Eagles to have someone like Fletcher Cox who excels at 1 technique, 5 technique, 3 technique. Like this dude can play.
Yeah,
everything.
I think
on
any
defensive
team would say
line, and he plays
to have a guy who's a consensus All-Pro.
Like consensus. Like this dude is he's right up there.
And the fact that it's not even debatable. Aaron Donald and him are unquestionably to everybody the best 2 defensive tackles in the league. It's not debatable.
Yeah, that's so we'll see. You know what I mean? Hopefully the news gets better as this quote-unquote training camp. It's might as well just be called summer camp moves along.
Not off 1 year. That's recency bias talking heavy if you're saying Chris Jones.
Wow.
Chris Jones is good. He's not better than Fletcher Cox.
I would argue Chris Jones is
up there.
He's good. He's really good.
It's more of a top 5 and
maybe you want Chris Jones as your defensive tackle going into the 2021 season, but who is the better defensive tackle? Fletcher Cox.
I don't know, man.
Some people would argue.
To me, it's one of those things where 1 is clearly Aaron Donald, and 2 through 5 you can put in any order, and I'd be all right with it.
I think Fletcher Cox is still at this point just barely enough of a step ahead of the rest of the field where he's a solid number 2 to me.
It was last year when
the gap.
It was last year when a couple of weeks a lot of people were getting on Fletcher Cox.
Yeah.
Which never happened before. Never happened before.
He has been one of those guys on the Eagles who has been traditionally exempt from criticism and gets a lot of the praise when his position group does well.
Yep. So that's it. We're going to move on to Tap Out.
We were
I can go first. I have something pretty light and easy going.
All right, go for it.
Without further ado, 17 days until the NFL season kicks off.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like
that. It doesn't feel like that. We're full swing with two of the other major 4 sports being deep in their playoff seasons. For me personally, I want to relate it back to the whole timeline of summer, right? Like for me, it's July 4th is the peak of the NBA. The season's just done. Every year we get the big free agency announcement or something big happens on July 4th. KD, Paul George trade, whatever it is, right? This year, the whole timeline's been messed up. I've been so adept to enjoying all the sports that are going on. I haven't been a good American and really enjoyed the fact that football is back in 17 days.
Football.
I haven't done a lick of fantasy football research.
Oh, I haven't either.
That's August 1st for me. I have a strict deadline for myself growing up. I realized that I love fantasy football, but I didn't want to be one of those guys that's on it 24/7, 365 days a year, talking about how the 4th-round running back draft by the Chiefs is going to impact, Damian Williams when he was still opted in. I never wanted to be one of those guys, so I made a strict rule for myself. No fantasy football research or evaluations or anything until August 1st. Then, at that point, you're a month away. You let it rip. I always want to be great in what I do, so now I'm going to leave it at this. I'm worried that I'm not going to be great at fantasy football this year because my timeline's been thrown off. So thank you, NBA and NHL, for giving me playoff sports from 1 p.m. until I go to bed every day. But if I lose money in fantasy football this year, I'm definitely going to be invoicing Adam Silver and Gary Bettman, who's so forgettable I forgot his name on air for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Didn't even know who was the NHL commissioner until 3 seconds ago.
There you go. The more you know.
I will say something that's not as light.
That's why I went first, because I had a feeling.
Yeah, and something that I wish I didn't have to keep saying, but I'll gladly keep saying it as long as I need to. There's a serious problem in this country with police brutality and how the African American community is treated by police and by the entire country. Another disturbing video surfaced yesterday, so I'll keep it brief. But justice for Jacob Blake, justice for Breonna Taylor, justice for George Floyd, and that's why this is why we say the things that we say. It's why we do the things we do. It's why you saw us protesting in the streets. It's because we see no change where we need to see change. So I'll continue to speak out until the correct change is needed.
Yeah, I don't need to add anything else. All I'm going to say is you took the words out of my mouth. Like, please stand with you. And justice for Jacob Blake, this is absolutely ridiculous. But that's going to be it for us.
Read the room, American cops.
Live. Yeah.
Read the room.
That's going to be it.
Open your eyes, go on social media, do anything.
Thank you for joining us on Trust the Process Live. You can catch us next week here, Monday. As always, we are brought to you by My New Philly, where something is always new and everything's always Philly.
And I'll guarantee you all, if you're a fantasy football slacker like us, we got you next week. Go Flyers.
You got you.
Go Fly. They are down 3-0.
Down 3-0? Whatever, dude. Like I said, this is shit.